unable to be with us today. Hi, my name is Dick Perez, and I'm excited to introduce Dylan Hewitt and Stuart Emerell as candidates for the New York's 21st Congressional District. I'll invite each candidate to introduce themselves and provide a 3 to 5 minute response, 3 to 5 minute synopsis of who they are, why they want to run and represent us, and what their qualifications are. Following the introductions, I'll open the floor for questions. Questions should be brief and comprehensive. What I'm going to try to do is if you have a question, raise your hand. I will just indiscriminately pick a hand. Please be brief and comprehensive with your question. I will ask each candidate to answer the question alternately. Following they'll have 2 to 3 minutes to answer the question. At the end of the question session, each candidate will have 3 to 5 minutes to wrap up with closing remarks. Again, yes?
Dick, what do you mean by comprehensive?
If you have a question, it should be fairly clear how it should be answered. It should be not subjective. You should be able to say not a yes or no answer. But for instance, if you asked a question that had to do with what are your plans for the decrease in the enrollment in schools in the Adirondacks? The answer could be something like, well, I believe in adding the schools together.
Okay.
Something that can be answered in a clear way. I'll also ask that if you hear a question that has the same substance as the question you are going to ask, please don't ask it. We're going to try to keep these in unique questioning. I'd like to have questions that involve the Adirondacks, which pretty much is the 21st district. Questions that involve national politics and questions that involve international politics. So at least have a question, at least 1 or 2 questions that involve that whole gamut. So again, thank you for being here. We appreciate it, and we appreciate our candidates. So, Stuart, I'd like to ask you to step up and introduce yourself.
Right. I think I'm going to pass on the microphone. Those that have been to some of my events before may know I don't need a microphone. Thank you. Thank you for asking me to be here this afternoon, and more importantly, thank you for showing up and coming. This is what we need in democracy right now, and this is what I think we are seeing. So, my name is Stuart Emerell. I'm running for Congress. You may know me better as the restaurant guy running for Congress, and that is what I've been doing for the past 10 years. I'm from I live in Lake Placid. I've lived there for about 10 years. I own a restaurant called the Pickle Pig, and I've been doing that for the past 10 years where I've been raising my 2 children. I have a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old, both girls. And my family's originally from the area. They were born, both my parents were born and raised in Tupper Lake. Both their parents were from Tupper Lake. But before I was born, they moved to Maryland, where I was born and raised. I went to school at Loyola, where I studied political science and philosophy, and then international relations at KU Leuven in Belgium. I was an intern for a congressman. It was a Republican congressman, I will say, because that's going to come out. I am for decades, I have been an independent. That has been my stance. I believe in making judgment based on policies and people, not necessarily the party that they're aligned with. That said, I align more, especially these days, more so with democratic policies and democratic solutions. I also believe that if you want to actually win in an election, which is important, because to govern, you have to win. I believe that you need the underlying infrastructure, and this is an unfortunate evil of the United States. It's a two-party system. You really have to be part of one of those parties if you're going to have a successful chance at winning. Before I moved up here 10 years ago, I had started a technology company in DC. It was a supply chain management technology company, and I spent 15 years doing that. And then my parents moved back up to the area, and when my eldest was 3, my wife and I had the question, where do we want to raise our children? We loved the DC area, the Northern Virginia area, but it was not where we wanted to raise our children. We loved the Adirondacks. I spent my youth here, and my family was here, so we decided to move back, and we bought the restaurant. At this time, I had no desire to get into politics. I studied it in college. I enjoy it, which is probably not a very politically wise thing to say that you like politics, but I do. I like the idea of governance. I like the idea of thinking about what policies are good for this country. It's interesting. And as interesting as that was, I never thought I was going to run for Congress, which is why I was also the last person to get involved in the race. And, I recognize that we have a quality of life problem in the North Country. And I think we all recognize that. This is why we dedicate certain time in our private lives to NGOs, to civic organizations. And I was good with that. I'm on the board of a nonprofit, Eagle Island, which is centered towards low-income and marginalized girls, giving them an opportunity to experience an Adirondack camp overnight experience in Saranac Lake. Most of our campers come from the inner city. And that is where I was comfortable being. But then I got to a point, and which I would say to steal from Malcolm Gladwell, I got to a tipping point. I'm sorry? 2 more minutes. Okay, thank you. So I got to this tipping point. I think he's gonna hold us all accountable here. I got to this tipping point, and I saw what was going on, and I'm like, you know what? I'm sick of yelling at the TV. This is not changing anything. And simply staying 1 foot in and 1 foot out, yes, staying involved in organizations, but not really committing to making a change is not going to work. And I will tell you the tipping point. I am concerned about the quality of life for all of Northern New Yorkers. And you're going to hear us talk about that a lot. But that's not what created the tipping point for me. It was the attack on democracy that was the tipping point. And literally, it was what's going on with immigration. That was an issue for me when I saw how we're going about. I believe we need strong borders, but I think we also have to have a fair, just immigration policy. And I had an employee of mine in November that was pulled over in Plattsburgh. He was here legally. He has TPS documentation. He worked for me. He was paying his taxes. He was all legal, but he got stopped for speeding. Not reckless driving, just stopped for speeding. And rather than give him a ticket, even though he had a license, the trooper broke the law and called ICE. ICE showed up. And even with his documentation, they took him in. And at that point, I got a call from a friend saying, hey, would you call a lawyer? And I said, okay, I will. Lawyer could not get in touch with him. Then we found out, and at this point, I didn't know what exactly was happening with ICE in terms of inside the jails. Turns out, they told him, here, sign this document. He doesn't speak English. Sign this document. It was in English. He said, well, no. Then you're going to El Salvador. And this is what they told him, and I'm listening to this in November. Then you're going to go to El Salvador. We're just going to put you in jail. And I'm like, this can't happen. This is America. Sure enough, it's time. Okay, I'll get back to this when we finish. But tipping point, all that. Thanks.
It is a small crowd, but I'm going to use the mic. Hey guys, how we doing? It's great to see you. I'm Dylan Hewitt. I'm South Glens Falls born and raised. I'm a 7th generation upstate New Yorker, and my family's lived in the North Country all the way back to the American Revolution. And what a district it is for us to be running in today, coming up on the 250th anniversary of America, where the idea of freedom took hold right here in the North Country, at the fort in Ticonderoga, where the first American victory happened, over on the battlefields in Saratoga, where the tides turned in our favor. I grew up in a family that taught me to believe in that America, where freedom wasn't just an idea, but it was a promise to live a life of dignity. And that was shaped for me from my grandpa Tom. He grew up very poor during the Great Depression in Hudson Falls. His mom had 3 boys, and she couldn't afford to raise them. She gave him away, and he was taken in by his Aunt Lillian, and he was fed through the back windows of his neighbors down the street. It's also how he met my grandmother, because she was his neighbor's daughter. And he went off to World War II, and he came back to a country that took care of its own, invested in its people, upheld that promise of freedom, a life of dignity. He got a good education on the GI Bill, he got a pathway to home ownership, a strong middle-class salary, and he raised our family to believe in that promise. And it's why I built a career in public service. I served as Secretary of State for many years on diplomatic missions around this country. I have been an executive at a nonprofit focused on expanding tax credits for working families, taking on billionaires and big corporations that keep squeezing us out, and making sure that we take on AI in a responsible way. I've served our country with a top secret clearance as a White House trade official, taking on big monopolies and big corporations, strengthening our national security against China. And it's why I'm in this race, because I know right now that promise of a life of dignity, of the freedom to thrive, is under threat. And for so many people in the North Country and across America, it's already gone. And it's our moment to restore it, to fight for it. Coming up on the 250th anniversary of our country, it's the legacy that the people who have lived across the North Country handed to us. I'm an uncle to my niece B and my nephews Benji and Leo and Teddy, and I think so much about how we give them that promise. What is that world going to look like? And it's time that we step up and fight for it. It's time to send someone with a backbone to Washington who will stand up to the big monopolies that keep jacking up our healthcare and our grocery and our utility costs. It's time to restore the promise of our democracy, get out the corruption, hold the Epstein class accountable, and bring them to justice. And it's time someone has a spine to stand up for working families in the North Country and stop selling us out through bad trade deals and bad economic policies, but to guarantee the promise my grandfather fought for, the promise my grandfather told me to fight for every single day, that you deserve a life of dignity and the freedom to thrive. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm so excited to answer your questions.
Now it's time to ask for questions from the floor. If anyone has a question ready, I'm certainly happy to have them answer it. Yes?
What are your feelings about debates before the primary, and are you willing to have one?
Dylan?
Sure, I can start. So I called for a debate about a week and a half ago. And Stuart, rightfully so, said, let's do it. We agreed to having a debate. Unfortunately, Blake Gendabine said they were unnecessary. He told the Times-Union that debates in the primary were unnecessary, and if I was in search of a crowd, I should just go to his event instead. I haven't gone to one of his events yet, but I'm not the one in search of a crowd. I actually think that you guys deserve a crowd. You deserve 3 people on a stage, side by side, talking about who we are, what we believe in, and why we're in this fight for you. In fact, there are 2 seats up here, and we should grab another one. Because after 6 years of Elise Stefanik not showing up for us, why would we continue the same cynical politics just under a different name? That's why I'm calling for a debate. Calling for us to stand on a stage and tell you why it would be the honor of a lifetime to fight for you in the halls of Congress. And it disappoints me, it angers me that Blake Gendabine is running the other way. I have to me it's very simple. I'm willing to stand up with a spine on a stage and debate because I'm willing to go to Congress and fight with a spine. That's what it comes down to.
I think one of the reasons we are in the situation we are in is because we've been complacent about democracy. We figured democracy was easy. It doesn't require work. And that's why we are where we are. I am certainly upset with all the policies from the Trump administration, but I don't necessarily hold him ultimately accountable. I hold us accountable. We failed. He did not storm the White House in the middle of the night with armed guards. We, as Americans, opened the door and handed him the keys to the White House. So it is our responsibility to fix this. And this is what debates are about. This is what today is about, engaging. And Dylan is going to show up, I'm going to show up, and we're going to have that dialogue. But ultimately, it is on all of you to ask the questions and to come in and say, what is it you believe? And I think that's how we will ultimately win in democracy. Because again, democracy is hard. It's not easy. So I do think we will have that debate. I think it will be good. And we'll get it scheduled.
Any others? Yeah.
I'll go with your question earlier. There was an article in Adirondack Life by Adam Fetterman about schools and the declining enrollment. What are we going to do about public education in the North Country?
We're alternating, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, yeah, it's a critical issue. As I said, I have a 9 and a 13-year-old, and I think the problems when you're trying to address the issues we're facing, and I would say these are, I get a little bit more time, right? We talk about quality of life issues, but the thing is, these things can't be dealt with in silos. Fixing the school crisis, fixing housing, fixing healthcare, they can't be dealt with in silos because they're all interrelated. What we need to do is strengthen our communities, and having strong communities will help us fix the economy issue. It's going to be dependent to fix the housing for this to happen, because we have the oldest population of the districts in New York. It's an aging population. Why is that? Because our youth are not staying here. Those that grow up here are not staying. And we're not attracting new youth here. So the underlying issue in terms of fixing the school system is continuing to build out robust communities. And that can only happen if we build out healthcare, right? Childcare. People are not going to move here if they can't get childcare. If they know they can't raise a family because they can't find a place to watch their children, guess what? They're not going to live here. If we don't have affordable and accessible elder care, where the parents that are here can't get taken care of, do you know what's going to happen? They're going to say, hey, Dad, how about we move further south where I can get a job and we can get you taken care of? So these are the underlying things. When we were talking about this here, the Grange, having activities and events that attract the youth, right? Things that they can go and participate in, the arts, music. These are the things that we need to do to have strong schools, to have youth stay. Housing, how do we expect the schools to be flourishing when young families can't afford to buy a house here? I mean, this is fundamental. If they can't afford a house, they're not going to move here, and they're not going to stay here. And we're going to see the result of that, which is schools. If they can't find a pediatrician, they are not going to raise their families here. So I think in terms of structuring and building up the schools, it's about strengthening our communities and strengthening those underlying fundamental things that are hollowing out our communities.
Thank you.
Stuart and I think, see eye to eye on a lot of what he just said. There are about 2/3 of our district that is in a child care desert. That about 63% of New York 21 can't find childcare within a 10-mile drive. And 10 miles around here could be 20 plus minutes out of your way to go to your job. So you're going 20 minutes in one direction just to turn around to go to your job. And frankly, when someone looks at that and the costs versus the benefits, they likely take the hit and exit the workforce. We've got young folks, as Stuart said, that just see it's not worth it. It's not worth it to stick around and have all these added costs, and they're leaving. You know, I served at the highest levels of our government as a trade official. It pains me, frankly, to say that our biggest export is young families. That's not a good export to have. And we need to be investing in the infrastructure to keep families here. When it comes to public schools, this is really personal for me. My dad was an elementary school principal for over 20 years down in Saratoga County in Greenfield, one of the most rural parts of Saratoga County. I saw at a really young age what it meant to set up our kids in rural America for success. Before school care, after school care, activities that bring children at a young age together to teach them how to socialize and to be parts of teams and enjoy the arts like we're enjoying here in a space that brings communities together to enjoy music and arts. And so when it comes to declining enrollment and protecting our public school system, I believe that we need strong federal investment from a Department of Education. Under this administration, we've seen attacks on the public school system time and again. We see a Secretary of Education that can't tell the difference between A1 steak sauce and AI. That doesn't bode well for our district when we are entering a digital age and a new frontier where we don't know quite yet what AI means for the fields of education or for the future of work, especially here in rural America. And the lack of leadership right now is astounding to me. So we need someone who's gonna go to Washington with a real keen eye on what the Department of Education is hollowing out and what it means for rural America and how we strengthen investments between our federal and state partners to raise wages for teachers, to give them safe schools, and to give them the means and the resources to teach our kids, and to expand those services to keep those families here and give our kids a fair shot at success. I fundamentally believe that when you exit 12th grade, you should have the skills to start a business, enter a vocational training program, or go get a higher educational degree on your choice. We should be giving our kids the pathway to success, and that means that we need strong federal investment in our rural schools here to keep enrollment numbers up.
Thank you, Bill. Other question? Yes,
You don't mind if I read off my teleprompter?
please do.
Here. I didn't plan on asking a question. So this is a three-pronged question, a little bit.
Yes.
Do you support keeping local sheriffs and town police focused on local public safety rather than federal immigration enforcement? And as a member of Congress, would you oppose efforts to punish New York for passing New York for All, including voting against legislation that withholds funding to states for not cooperating with ICE?
Hi.
So, a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks ago?
Yeah, two weeks.
2 weeks ago, Stuart and I were the only two in this race to show up in St. Lawrence. I drove 3 hours to publicly testify against the 287G that St. Lawrence County passed 11-4. A 287G is an agreement between local law enforcement and federal immigration enforcement to enter a cooperative agreement where local resources are given to immigration forces, federal immigration forces. Stuart and I were the only ones there. Our colleague in this race, who lived 10 minutes down the street in Lisbon, didn't come oppose it. In fact, multiple times in this race, Blake Gendebine has said, we actually need to be hiring more agents, ICE agents. We actually need to have federal law enforcement and local law enforcement cooperation. I fundamentally oppose it. I have called since day one that we need to tear ICE down as it is. We need to prosecute these criminal agents. We need to impeach Kristi Noem, and we need to rebuild an immigration system that is rooted in the values of our nation. I don't hear that from the person who's not here tonight. On your second question, I wholeheartedly support the New York for All Act. And as a member of Congress, you better believe that I will go fight with a spine to uphold it in Congress, to make sure that Republicans and Donald Trump in Congress do not stampede on New York State's rights to protect its own people. And I want to make sure that we are using every single tool in front of us in the House of Representatives. Congressional oversight hearings. Drag these men in front under oath, make them testify, unmask them, and have them answer for the atrocities they have committed. Bring Kristi Noem under oath, frankly, fire her or impeach her, but we need someone who is willing to go fight for our people. I believe I'm the only one in this race willing to do so.
Thank you, Dylan.
I think it's worth noticing or mentioning that we're in New York. Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses. 4.5 hours south of us, those words are inscribed. What we are seeing now is antithetical to America and what we believe. So, absolutely, as I said earlier, there was a tipping point. What is happening now is not American, and this has to be fixed. So yes, New York for all, I absolutely support it. And yes, in Congress, I would ensure that nobody is penalized for doing so, because I think this is a federalist system where states have the ability to make decisions for themselves. This is how our government was set up. So to have a federal government punishing states is not only antithetical to the immigration question, it's antithetical to federalism as an institution, as far as America goes. Now, I think it's worth saying something else. We are in this position because Republicans and Democrats for decades have failed to address immigration. This is why we are here. We know, and those in power knew, we needed immigrants, that immigrants are vital to American culture. They knew that, but they also knew it was politically difficult to actually step up and fix it. So what did they do? They pretended they didn't notice it. Let's just not attack it. Let's let them stay here. Because it's not good for us, it's not good for our businesses if we actually did something about it, and we can't say that we want amnesty because then it's politically. So we are here because people lacked, as Dylan said, a spine to address it. So that must end. We must step up and finally solve the issue and have a pathway to citizenship. Now, the only thing, and I'm going to lose some votes here, but I think saying the talking points and the easy stuff is not what this is about. So I should sit down if I wanted to keep some votes. But it is unfortunate that our law enforcement can't work with federal law enforcement. I find that to be, it is necessary. It is absolutely necessary because of what's happening. The paramilitarization of federal agents in the way that's happening requires us to stand up and say no. But my gosh, the reality of us saying no, we are going to pass laws saying that our local police can't work with, that's ridiculous. I mean, and that should trouble us all. I not only want to fix this, and I do agree we can't have local working with ICE at the moment, we need to get to a place when that can happen, when they can work together, not only to secure the borders, but to fight smuggling, to fight human trafficking. These are the things that they should exist for. So yes, yes, thank you.
Any other questions?
There could be a counterpoint to that, right?
Takes the moderator.
Did you not have a chance?
No.
Basically, I'm saying.
Can we take that?
I'm sorry, yes.
Can we take that point a step further? And can you outline a more ideal immigration approach?
Yes. Yeah. So, first, I think fundamentally, pathway to legalization and citizenship for those that are here. This is one of the underlying issues, right? So we have allowed people to be here for decades, and they've been members of our communities. We've known that they have been working. They have been paying taxes, despite what we like to be told. But they have, they're not legalized. They have no safety nets. If they slip and fall, they're out of luck. Their children's futures are jeopardized because if they get deported, then at this point, as we're seeing right now, their children, even if they're American citizens, are getting deported. So first, we need to create a pathway to citizenship. We have to make sure that, DACA and Dreamers we are supporting to make sure that these people that are in the United States are not fearing day to day the threat of deportation. Because how can you thrive as a person if you feel that day to day, the fact that you're even living here may be jeopardized. So pathway to citizenship, supporting Dreamers, making sure that happens. But we also have to do more than that. We have to make sure that we understand what it means to come to these shores broken and beaten looking for asylum. So yeah, we need strong borders. I believe that we do. But we also have to reaffirm that when people come here and say, listen, I'm facing persecution, my life is in jeopardy, that we reaffirm our right to say, then you know what? Come on in. We will protect you. And this is what we did to all those people on TPS. those people, and yes, there's a lot of Venezuelans. The one I told you about was a Venezuelan. They felt threatened. And then, of course, we just ripped TPS away, saying, you know what? You're not under threat. Well, apparently we were, because we went into the country and invaded the country. So clearly, there was a reason to feel threatened. But we had all these people come here, and then we said, you know what? You're out. They were working, they had jobs, they had children in schools. People that worked for me were here legally, and their children are going to school. Then the next day, they're like, uh-oh, I may be removed. My children and I may be removed. That can't happen. So we have to double down and say, listen, from an asylum standpoint, if you come here, we will protect you. So we have to double down on that. Yes.
Before I answer your question, Art, I want to go really fast back to the 287G. One of the reasons I oppose them are because they drain local resources. There are multiple cases across our country that show that 287Gs result in higher racial profiling that is unconstitutional, and that they cost local municipalities millions of dollars that those municipalities don't have. And so there is a real concern that we are draining resources out of the North Country that we don't have, and for what? To invite mass men into our communities to terrorize our families and our children, raid our small businesses. A pathway to citizenship, bare minimum, excuse me. But we also need to restore the legitimacy of our judicial branch. We need to bring back judges for accountability, for efficiency. Those under this administration that have been fired out of the court system, they need to be able to look at cases, asylum cases, folks who are in front of them, people who are waiting years, decades even, to go through our immigration system. We need to be able to bring those folks who have been here for decades into our country and keep them here. There's a brain drain right now. I think we feel it even here in the North Country of folks that are leaving and saying, I don't even want to be targeted, I'm just gonna go. That to me is unacceptable. We're seeing doctors leave. Folks who should be able, immigrant doctors who should be able to work and serve the North Country. We're seeing laborers, construction workers. There's a workforce crisis right now in the building trades. That jacks up our housing costs. It makes it harder for us to build housing that we need here in the North Country. We need to make sure that we are tackling this immigration crisis in a humane way to keep people here safely and to also strengthen our economy at the same time. So pathway to citizenship, restore judicial oversight, and then I want to be really clear about my view of pay-to-play politics in our immigration system. The Department of Homeland Security has corrupt contracts with surveillance companies that should end. We need to take on the corruption in Washington that keeps paying millions of dollars in our hard-earned taxpayer money to build out detention facilities, warehouses, holding cells up in Plattsburgh, and then millions of dollars to Peter Thiel and Palantir and all of these oversight big tech companies that get data on American citizens. And what are they using it for? How many people watched the Super Bowl? Did you see that Ring commercial that said all of a sudden rings can track down your dog? They're tracking down humans. They're tracking down immigrants. They're using that, I don't want to swear, they're using that stuff to track us. And so we need an immigration system that also protects due process and privacy under the Constitution and takes on that corruption in Washington that keeps selling people out.
One thing I did neglect to say, and I'm sorry, I would ask you to say your name and where you're from, what community you're from. Yes.
Yeah, my name's Ralph Lewis. I live in Elizabethtown in this county. This district has voted Republican for many years. You're basically preaching to the choir. What are you going to do to attract that majority that's not here living in the cities?
I love this question. We've played the same playbook for 10 years. We've let party establishment choose someone. That person has really run to the middle, said, I'm just like Elise, but I got a little D next to my name on the ballot. Vote for me instead. It is a failed playbook. It's a cynical playbook that keeps asking us to settle for less while the very top keeps getting richer and we keep getting sold out. I'm 33. I'm part of a new generation of leadership with a spine, willing to go to Washington and fight. I've also seen behind the curtain. And I'm not the party establishment's pick in this race because I'm willing to call out the corruption and I'm willing to take on the big monopolies that keep selling us out. And I know that big monopolies aren't just jacking up my costs. They're not jacking up just your costs either. Grocery costs, healthcare costs, utilities, up across the board. And corporate power has too much of a chokehold on our democracy and our economy. In my house, we have this conversation all the time because my father-in-law is a 3-time Trump voter. Someone who worked for Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris, like, okay, he still voted for Trump, so let's talk about it. And what it comes down to is that we have a belief in love for our country, a belief in love for service, and we know and we agree that there has been little accountability and too much corruption going on in Washington without answers. I'm gonna be short on time, but I'm gonna say this story very fast. When I was down in Arkansas, my partner's from rural Arkansas, so I'm driving around in the back roads with my father-in-law. He's a goldfish farmer. My partner grew up as a goldfish farmer in rural Arkansas. We're talking about airplanes and airlines. We're down from 12 to 4 major airlines right now. And when I was down there for his 60th birthday last year, we were driving around talking about how Delta came out and said they were going to use algorithmic pricing to track our data to jack up costs to fly. That when they could see that you were in a rush to buy a flight because you were going to a funeral or you needed to go see a sick loved one, they could capture all that data and all of a sudden your ticket was going to be double the price of someone else who was just going on to buy the same ticket. It stopped my father-in-law in his tracks. And those are the types of conversations that I have with Trump voters here in our district. Folks who have voted time and again for Elise Stefanik. I have house parties across our district where folks invite 20 of their family, their friends, their neighbors, people I've never met before, into their homes because I believe fundamentally we gotta meet them where they're at rather than in traditional Democratic committee spaces. Bring them into a space where there is a trusted messenger, someone they trust, and let's have that conversation. I met an older couple in Glens Falls. The host of my house party said for every single cycle they had an Elise sign in their yard, and they came over to meet me. And after talking to them, they came up to me afterwards and they said, Dylan, we didn't expect to agree with you on everything, but we're walking away with 2 things. You're a man of integrity and you're a man of strong faith. And you're also a man with a spine to go fight against corporate power. And so fundamentally for me, this is a race about who are we willing to side with? Are we willing to side with working families across our district, those who have been sold out by bad trade deals like NAFTA and policies that keep making the rich richer? Or are we willing to side with the billionaires and big corporations? I know which side I'm on. And I think when I go to spaces and I talk about it, folks will walk away knowing which side I'm on too.
We have an existential crisis right now in this country. And it starts with communities. And we have to win. As Democrats, we have to win right now. So I think the question you ask is important. And it touches on some people when we talk about electability. And I understand that the electability question is distasteful for some people. But the truth is, it's not enough for the 3 of us as candidates to be up here preaching to the choir, talking about democracy, and then in November say, well, hey, we fought for democracy, but hey, Constantino's in Congress. That cannot happen. We must win as a party. We must fight for our ideals. And I think where some people get upset in terms about the electability question is if you make the decision too soon. We have 4 months in front of us, and I think our democracy is served by Dylan, Blake, and I getting together and having a dialogue. I think we all like each other, by the way. It's pretty easy because this is not a jet. I think so. I don't want to speak for him. But we're all fighting for democracy. So the electability question is, hey, let's spend the next 4 months having the debate and talking about it. But in the end, we need to win. Now, how do we do that? I think one of the problems in this country is the polarization. But the polarization is what we see in the media. I do not believe it reflects our communities. If you were to look at statistics, those on the left in Congress are further to the left than most people. And those on the right in Congress are further to the right than most people. Most of us exist in the middle, but we don't see that. We think, oh, you're a Republican, you must be a Trumper. Oh, you're a Democrat, you must just want to be an AOC supporter. There can't be anything in the middle. The truth is, if you look at the statistics, most of us are in the middle. Most of us, regardless of party, Republican. The Trumpers, we may not ever win back. But Republicans, Independents, Democrats, we all want to fix the healthcare issue. We all want a more affordable life. We want a better education for our children. We want to solve the healthcare issue. So what we need to do is engage. This is how we win. We engage the public. We engage our neighbors and say, listen, don't listen to the media. Don't listen to these politicians on both sides trying to say that the other is the enemy. Because that is not where we are. We meet in places like this and say, listen, healthcare is a problem. This is my solution. This is our solution as a party. And let me tell you why we think it works. And I think that is how we win. Because people in the end will vote on policy. They will vote on ideas, and they will vote on the person. Especially in the North Country, where we cling to our independence so much. So I think the way we win is not through talking points, but it is by engaging people and having a conversation and saying, listen, we all care about these things. Let me tell you why our solution is better. Thank you.
We have time for, I'm sorry. Yes, Tom.
I want to, first of all, thank you guys for coming up here. You probably took planes, trains, and automobiles to come up and talk to 25 people. But anyway, we appreciate it. And Dick and Bobby, I'm sure, did a great job pulling you guys up here. But and I especially appreciate the segue into healthcare. So, 21, there's a couple of things going on that are pretty important to us, right? You know, 21 is a relatively rural place. I mean, I think the mean household income is maybe 70, give or take, something like that. It's almost 700,000 people up here, maybe 8, okay? And in the hospital world, most of our hospitals are small and rural. The one that we go to often has 25 beds, okay? And there's a magic number with those guys, it's 35%, okay? If you already know this, right? So if you have more than 35% of your patients that are on Medicaid or Medicare, you know, you're in trouble right now, especially with what's going on down in Washington, right? So, you know, what are you going to do about that? Because that's, yeah, I mean, you're first-time congressman, you're sitting down in the basement, yeah, of course.
Tom, is this I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is this a question because
Yeah, what are you going to do about
How are we
the
gonna fix
Medicaid,
it?
Medicare stuff?
Yeah, so how are we gonna fix healthcare? Yeah.
We have just you have a couple minutes and then we've got to wrap up, so.
Okay, I can solve healthcare in 2 minutes. Yeah, I'm joking. Yeah, so you're talking about critical care centers, right? Critical care center hospitals that have 25 beds or less.
Yeah.
They operate on cost plus 1%, and the patients can only stay for, I think, 48 hours, right? So there is an issue with that model. Our hospitals are under stress, and there's a number of reasons for that. First, I'm going to try to get to this quickly. First, the primary care network is stressed here, right? We don't have enough primary care providers. What does that mean? It means that when you just have a cold or your kid gets a scrape, you have to go to the emergency room. So you're putting incredible stress on hospitals, both operationally and resource-wise, because we don't have a strong primary care network. So we need to build out the primary care network. And you can do that through, we have to be realistic in the North Country, because it's not just about the national issues about healthcare rising, it's also about accessibility, like you're talking about. So, there's this concept of federally qualified healthcare centers, right? An example of this is Hudson Headwaters. Hudson Headwaters is an FQHC, which means they get a little bit more from Medicare and Medicaid, and it also means that if somebody defaults and doesn't pay, the government is the backer. So these institutions are able to operate up here where usually economically it's very, very difficult for operators to exist. But because they have this federal backing, they can actually operate in rural communities. So what we need to do is expand the preferred provider network. We have to have more of these FQHCs so that you can have more specialists, more pediatricians, more primary care physicians. You can build out, because of this, telehealth, mobile health. So in these communities, you can access care. What that's going to do is reduce the stress on the hospitals. But we also have to refund Medicaid, which we did. So 30% of the 750,000 people up here are on Medicaid. And 30% of those are about to lose their funding. So they're going to lose their funding. Not only are they not going to get care, but these hospitals are not going to be able to exist. We've already seen this right now, what's happening to the hospitals. So we need to make sure that we refund that so Medicaid is supported, and then we need to reduce the stress by making sure that the primary care network is building out and taking some things. And then we have to see, does it make sense to have critical care facilities everywhere, or do we centralize a little bit more? Because a strong argument is made that these critical care centers can't really fulfill the need that they're supposed to lead, because they have to get people out within 48 hours. So can you build up these hospitals a little bit more to strengthen it? So I think we have to make hospitals economically solvent, and that happens through building out the primary care network.
Thank you.
I approach this a little differently. I think we have seen massive vertical integration in the healthcare market over the last couple of decades, where big conglomerates have consolidated over and over again, and it has rigged our healthcare system to the point where it's so broken that I believe the only path forward is Medicare for all. You have, for example, someone like CVS, which owns Aetna, and then owns Caremark. And you have someone like United Health, which insures 1 in 3 Americans, but they also own hospitals, and then they own pharmacies, and they own the ways that pharmaceutical benefit managers negotiate in secret on the cost of prescriptions. The pathway to accessible healthcare and affordable healthcare is by breaking up those monopolies. There's too much of a chokehold at every single part that we pay, and specifically in the healthcare system, in the hospitals, where hospitals too often are fighting with insurance companies to be able to get the quality of staffing and the quality of care that patients like us across rural America need. We need strong federal investment to stabilize rural hospitals. Right now, 5 in the North Country are at risk of closure, on the brink of closure, because of what Elise said she was proud to vote on, which is gutting Medicaid. We need to expand Medicare to get more folks in. There's a bill in the Senate that I support, that Bernie Sanders has, that would immediately expand Medicare to children, dental and vision, mental health, and over 5 years expand it to a Medicare for All program across our country. But that's a long-term vision. And we need to make sure that we don't enter a healthcare crisis that I see us entering right here and right now with the ACA on life support. It's a big difference in this race, which is why, again, I've asked for a debate. Back in the last government shutdown, I said Democrats should hold the line on the ACA subsidies, that we shouldn't cave during that government shutdown, because we had, as the minority party, the largest leverage that Democrats had thus far in this administration. Blake Gendebine said Democrats were playing games. He said we should just wait until after 2026 when you go to the ballot box, that we had already lost, so what was the point? It's why I keep asking for a debate, because issues like these are not ideas. They show up in our daily lives. I've met people time and again across this district. Annie in Warren County, she was about my age. She told me she and her husband decided to go uninsured this year because they were just too scared to even look at the marketplace. I met Ori out in Fulton County, a senior. She told me, I need to be able to afford my prescriptions and I just can't right now. And I met Kim over in Washington County. She told me she's got 2 young boys who are 26, just got kicked off their parents' health insurance. They're struggling to find a job, and the added cost of getting health insurance is keeping them down. And so we need someone who is going to break up the chokehold that health insurance companies have in our hospital systems, in our doctor's offices, in the way you get your care. And then we need to be able to take that profit out of it and start putting the money back in your pockets and start making sure that we cover our folks and give them that life of dignity.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. Now it's time for, excuse me, each one of the candidates to make your closing remarks. You have up to 5 minutes to wrap it up, and
Am I first?
you are.
Okay. Oh, that's good. This was fun. I want to go back to the idea of electability in our district for a second, because I keep getting this question. I'm 33. Am I too young? Am I too inexperienced? Should I wait my turn? I'm the person in this race that rejects corporate PAC money and APAC money. I'm the person in this race that has called out big billionaires and big corporations for having too much power in Washington. I'm the person also who has seen behind the curtain and knows why good ideas in Washington go to die. And the reason that the establishment doesn't want me in this race is because I'm willing to call out the corruption and willing to end the pay-to-play politics. I'm willing to go have the hard conversations and say, it's time to make our lives better. It's time a full-time job pays enough to raise your family. It's time no one in the North Country has to drive 2 hours just to see the doctor. And it's time Washington stops working just for the oligarchs and starts working for you. We talked about that idea of freedom, that promise to live that life of dignity, as I mentioned earlier. But there's also something in this district that I don't want to go unnoticed. An independence of our people that have stood shoulder to shoulder and have supported candidates that have run on issues just like I have, that have had a vision for a better America. Bernie Sanders won our district in 2016. Zephyr Teachout, who has endorsed our campaign, won her gubernatorial race in 2014, her attorney general race in 2018. Donald Trump, frankly, ran on a fake populism, and he won this district too, a district that voted twice for Barack Obama and then flipped to Donald Trump. This is not a question of being center or center-left for me right now. It's about who's going to fight for you and stop letting the very top keep getting richer. I'm not the progressive in this race. I'm the populist. I'm the one willing to go break up the big monopolies that have rigged our economy and have corrupted our democracy. That takes a spine. You can't take them on while taking the corporate checks. You can't take them on while selling our folks out time and again. And it's why when I look at an empty seat here where the third person in our race can't bother to show up, can't have a debate, it's why I keep saying we cannot afford to have the same cynical politics of Elise Stefanik just under a different name. 15 people chose a candidate, and 15 people do not speak for 15 counties. You deserve a voice and a choice, and I'm running to be your next representative because I believe you deserve a fighter and a life of dignity. Thank you so much for having me.
Stuart?
Yes, I don't take PAC money either. Okay, just to be clear. I would refuse it, but they also haven't offered it, just to be clear. So, I guess I had some closing remarks, but I just decided to throw them in. It's probably not a smart move. But the healthcare thing got me thinking, and the Medicare for all. And I envy your age. I envy that you're 33. And I don't think it's disqualifying at all. And I as I was listening to Dylan, and I agree, there's an idealism that I find hopeful, and that I as well take, I gain hope from it. I think there is a practicality or a pragmatism that has come with my age, which might be a little bit unfortunate. But I like the concept of Medicare for all. I also don't think we're there. And if you vote for me, and I will probably lose more votes with this, I would rather be successful in having every American covered than coming back to the district and say, listen, we lost the vote, but I voted for it as a true Democrat. And say like, I held the party line. Yeah, children are still not covered. Adults still not covered, but I supported the Democratic line. I will tell you today, I will compromise. I will work with the other side in pursuit of the goal of getting everybody covered. Call it whatever you want. I don't believe Medicare for all is realistic at this point. Why? Because, as Dylan said, the ACA is on life support. That alone is on life support. I don't see how we're actually going to get to Medicare for all anytime soon. But what we can get to is everybody covered. Every child, every adult covered. And that is what I care about. And if that means working with the other side, then so be it. We have to compromise. And there's a couple of reasons we have to do that. First, people say, well, no, we don't. Let's have a blue wave. Let's take back Congress. And then in 2 years, let's take back the White House. Yeah, possibly. Possibly you could get it done then. But you know what happens? We will not always be in power. We've seen this with climate change. We've seen, oh, let's get it done. Then we lose power and everything we did gets undone. So when you do it on your own, when you do it without bipartisan support, everything you do, even if you win, gets undone 4 years later or 8 years later. So we make no progress. So we not only have to work with the other side to actually make change, but that's the way democracy is supposed to be. And that's the way we have enduring change, rather than seeing the most profound climate change policies put in place under Biden and Obama, but then ripped away under Trump. We need to find a way to work together. So I will say, if you vote for me, do understand when I come back, I will probably be having meetings where people are yelling at me and say, why did you vote that way? And I'll say, because I came together to get something done. And the last thing I want to say is, I don't know how this election is going to go, right? We don't know. I'm in it to have my voice heard, and hopefully, so some people can hear it and say, you know what, that solution sounds good, regardless of what happens in my political future. But I want to close with how I opened. We are where we are because I think America took democracy for granted. So whenever we leave here, let's all commit to engaging, not with those that agree with us, but with those that disagree with us. When we're out wherever we are, the community centers, churches, events, arts festivals, have the conversation. I know it's not always easy, but that's what democracy demands of us. That is the only way it's going to change. And it doesn't matter who gets elected here. It doesn't matter, I mean, these things matter. But what really matters long term is that we as citizens engage in our democracy. So I think that is the call, and I think if anything, that is the silver lining we're seeing now, is people engage. Yes. Well, I'll give you the last thing. So, I don't know why I'm going to say this, but we need people to step up for office. And St. Lawrence County, the Democratic Committee said, listen, we need people to run. And we're going to have a meeting for people to show up and learn how to vote. And I saw a picture on Facebook the other day. It was, Democratic Committee, and in the front was my 80-year-old father, sitting there that walked in to learn how he can run for office. And I almost came to tears. Which, again, if you've heard my speech, doesn't happen often. But I saw my 80-year-old dad thinking, okay, this is what I need to do something. I'm retired. And I looked at that and I'm like, wow, this is the silver lining of where we are today. People are showing up, people who had no idea that they were ever going to run for office, like me, doing this. And I think that's what we have to all commit to. And again, have the tough conversations, not just with those that agree with us. Thank you for coming out. My phone number is on my website, email. Feel free to continue the dialogue. And drive safely.
Thank you to Dick and Bobby.
Thank you. There you
I
are.
want to
Thank you.
thank you, Dylan and Stuart, for making the effort to be here. And I want to thank all of you, not just for your being here today, but for your tenacity in trying to educate yourselves and taking the time and the effort to see what's out there so you can make decisions for yourself. And when you make decisions, they will be the right decisions, regardless of what they are, if you feel that you've done the right job and you've worked hard to get the answer that you're looking for. So thank you for being here, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.